piece of film music written by the great British composer Ralph Vaughan Williams, commemorating the work of Coastal Command in the Second World War. Vaughan Williams was one of the most accomplished composers of the 20th century, but did you know that he saw active service in the First World War? His story on the Western Front and that of fellow composer George Butterworth is the subject of a new novel written by a Norwich author. It's called The Pastoral, and it's written by Norwich City College lecturer Jon Lawrence, who joins us in the studio now. Good afternoon, Jon.
Good afternoon.
Why have you written a book about these two composers who are long since gone, but obviously their music still resonates, doesn't it?
Yeah, the music still means a lot to me, personally. Vaughan Williams' music has often been referred to as sort of quintessentially English or quintessentially British, and he's always had a sort of impact on me. And he's an intriguing character. He never really spoke that much about his experiences in the First World War. So what I've done in this latest book that I've written called The Pastoral is to sort of hypothesize and try and guess what might have happened, but I've based it around most of the facts that we do know.
So it's a mixture of fact and fiction.
Yes, it's semi-fictional, yeah.
But it's an educated guess, a lot of it.
Well, yes, I mean, what I've done is, in terms of the facts and figures, you know, Vaughan Williams did serve during the First World War. He was an ambulance driver and stretcher bearer. And his friend, George Butterworth, also served. He was a soldier and died at the Battle of the Somme, but not before he was awarded the Military Cross for bravery. So a lot of the things that we do know have weaved into the story, but in terms of, sort of, I suppose, the emotional side, the thought processes that were going on in their heads, there's a little bit of guesswork going on there.
A lot of people will know the work of Vaughan Williams, but not so much George Butterworth, and that's probably because he died very young, didn't he?
Yes, it was one of the great tragedies, really, of classical music in the first part of the 19th century. 20th century. George Butterworth was highly respected, and really was. They thought we were going to go on to great things and create great music. He did create some wonderful music. On the Banks of Green Willow, for example, is a beautiful, idyllic sort of English piece, which Vaughan Williams would have been proud of, I imagine. But it was such a tragedy that he was taken away at such a young age.
Not the only artist, though, not just musicians, but poets and authors. There was a terrible death toll, as there was from all walks of life. But it seems very poignant, doesn't it, when people like this, who are still remembered for their work, we find out that they actually died on the Western Front. Yes, and that's one of the things that I look at in the book, really, is that the scale of the loss, and also the scale of the creativity that was lost. You know, that as you say, the great composers like George Butterworth, I'm sure, would have been. Wilfred Owen, of course, Rupert Brooke. A lot of these great artists in their own field. You know, I just wonder what would have happened. You know, what might they have brought to art in the 20th century. Back to Vaughan Williams himself, though, and he was in the medical corps, and he would have seen an awful lot, wouldn't he, of very bad things.
Yes, he would have. And again, I've kind of hypothesised on what he might have seen. But what I've done is that I've based it on the true accounts of the veterans of the First World War. So the Imperial War Museum was really, really useful in giving me sort of information, first-hand information from soldiers. And so I've weaved that into what happens in the story, and tried to see how Vaughan Williams would react to those situations from a creative point of view, really.
Was he already known for his work before the war?
Yes, he was quite well known. He had the Thomas Tallis had made him quite famous, and so he was well respected. But and he was very patriotic. He would have served as a soldier had he not been a couple of years too old, which is why he ended up in the medical corps. But yes, he was well respected already by that point.
And is there a feeling, I mean, through your researches, do you get a feeling that his music changed after the First World War and was informed by his experiences of the trenches?
Certainly, yes. Well, I feel so. As I say, he never really spoke much about it, but if you listen to the work prior to the war, you've got a lot of as I say, quintessentially English music. It sounds English, very lyrical. But after the war, the First World War, the music became a bit more mysterious, a little bit more ambiguous.
A bit more haunted.
Yes, and particularly the Pastoral Symphony, which is what the book is based on. I came into that sort of category. Still had a sense of lyricism about it, but the main one of the main parts of the piece of music, the symphony, was a bugle call, which Vaughan Williams heard, which was a bugler trying to play an interval of an octave, but not quite getting there, and that sort of informed the music. And in the book, it's the only thing he can hear, because what happens is that Vaughan Williams sort of has a sort of writer's block and loses his creative sort of muse, seeing everything that's going on, all the carnage and everything, and all he can hear is this two-note phrase. But that found its way into the Pastoral Symphony, which is, yes, certainly a lot more mysterious and ambiguous than others.
How difficult then was it to weave a narrative in these two different men and their two different experiences, although having the one thing in common of being British composers? I'm
not sure it was particularly difficult. I had the idea in my head, and I just wanted to explore what a World War One would do to the mind of a creative mind, whether it's Vaughan Williams or George Butterworth. They both had different sort of approaches. Vaughan Williams in the book is portrayed slightly more cynical about the whole thing, whereas George Butterworth is much more almost jingoistic and certainly very proud and wants to serve his country. But no, in terms of weaving the story together, it kind of using a lot of the facts that I know and the framework of time that I had, it kind of sorted itself out, really.
And does your story end in 1918? Because Vaughan Williams lived for another 40 years, didn't he?
Essentially it ends in 1916, which is with the death of George Butterworth. But there's a little bit of that afterwards, but no, that essentially finishes 16.
Where does your love of this music come from?
I had a friend who was he studied music at Cambridge, and he introduced me to a lot of English music, not just Vaughan Williams, but another one of my favourites is a guy called Gerald Finzi. And I just got the bug, really, and just loved the lyricism of it, loved the unashamedly romantic side of the music. It's just really pure and sweet.
Yeah, British composers aren't often celebrated as much as their foreign counterparts, although we seem to have a love affair with all the Beethovens and the Mozarts. Of course, they were geniuses, but maybe we underplay our own composers when they should be celebrated a little bit more.
I think so, yes. I mean, Vaughan Williams produced a massive amount of work and, and experimented with lots of, different compositional devices.
Well, he wrote film music, as we heard just now. That was a wartime. So he was doing his bit in the Second World War as well.
Yes, I mean, that's the way he felt he could serve the country, so to speak, was to write music for sort of propaganda films and music to inspire, really. And if you hear some of the music, for example, a film called The 49th Parallel, with
Powell and Pressburger.
That's right, and Laurence Olivier with probably the worst ever French accent. But the music is so uplifting, so British. But yes, they should be celebrated much more than they are. Really, they brought so much to 20th century music.
Well, this book brings alive an episode in Ralph Vaughan Williams' life and indeed George Butterworth's short life, two British composers on the Western Front during the Great War, and the fact that it's the 100th anniversary, did that make you, sort of spur you into action?
I suppose so. I'd already started writing this and planning this, a couple of years ago, and I actually got down to doing it last year, so good timing.
Is it your first novel?
It's my first novel, yes. I've written sort of comic essays and volumes of poetry, and I have a novella coming out later on this year, and the next novel will be coming out around about this time next year.
And the day job at City College?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. What do you lecture in?
I lecture in music.
funnily enough. Well, thank you very much. Congratulations on the book, Jon Lawrence from Norwich City College, and we'll just remind everyone, it's called The Pastoral, and it's out now, available via online?
It's available online from Amazon as a paperback or Kindle.
And how much?
Reasonably priced.
Yes, these vary, of course, the prices these days. You can never say exactly what they're going to be. Well, well done once again on The Pastoral, and thank you very much for coming in to talk to us about it.
Thank you for having me.